Hello everybody, this is going to be a fairly short video today. I think for the past few years I've been steadily getting more and more depressed and unhappy and dissatisfied with life in general, really. A big part of my unhappiness is probably genetic in origin, I suspect. But I think some of it is from growing up in a kind of what they call a relative poverty situation, whereby what I mean by that is growing up in less than ideal circumstances. Growing up with parents that never really had any money. Growing up in an area that very rarely saw any kind of investment, really, or any care, besides a few youth workers and vicars and community hubs, or whatever you want to call those things. You know, youth centres and things like that, really. But even then, it was kind of things, you know, I think, you know, especially if you're comparing the UK to the US, it really is, it's been really, in many respects, a kind of impoverished nation for the last, probably since the Second World War, really. And certainly since the decline of industry and manufacturing, and sort of the high street, you know, my country's dead, basically. It's gone. It really. I find it really upsetting. I find it really depressing how disastrous the UK has become in these past, it's just 10 years, 15 years. I think I saw the kind of the beginning of the end, really, honestly, in the UK, probably. I mean, it was always, certainly where I grew up in Hull, in East Yorkshire, it's always been a bit of a dump, honestly. But there was, I can even say it, there was kind of more character to the city, there was more life in the city, there was more, there was an energy, there was a vibe there back in the 90s and 2000s, and really ever since the certainly since sort of 06 or 07 time onwards, it's just gradually gotten worse. And by the time the pandemic came around, the country was practically on its knees. You know, the country's got nothing to offer. You know, nobody wants to really tap into the resources that we have in terms of oil and fracking and things like that, and because of environmental concerns, and no one seems to be interested in bringing any kind of business or manufacturing back to the UK on a scale that would make a big difference to the economy and generate a lot of income for the country. We've become too obsessed with this whole green save the planet agenda over the last 20 years, 25 years. And on top of the economic decline, you've also had this cultural and social degradation and deliberate attempt at sabotage and everything that was things that were better or interesting about the country. You know, the closing of markets, libraries, shops. It's really fucking depressing. It's really, really depressing. And what's the future for the country? Well, for the time being, we've got a Labour government which seemed hell-bent on destroying the working class and the middle classes as well. You know, there's just no hope for there's no hope at the moment in that country. There's no hope for just no hope. There's no. The country's dead. It's finished. The moment we got involved in the Second World War was the final nail in the coffin, really. And we had to pay our dues, as it were, for colonialism. Like, we're the only country that's ever done it. And slavery and the empire in general. And the woke brigades had their way certainly over the last 10 years with everything. This is sexist, this is racist, this is homophobic, this is Islamophobic, this is ageist, this is this. And very few people have really challenged them and stopped them. And so they've had their way with the country. They've been allowed to run amok and they've destroyed the country. They've obliterated anything that was the traditions, the heritage, the history. The left wants it all. They want to put it all in the dustbin and pretend that none of it ever happened. That it was all bad. That it was all discriminatory in some way, or evil or bad or whatever. I don't know what the future is for that country anymore. I don't even really know if England is even a country anymore. I don't know what it is anymore. I don't know what it's supposed to be, what it's supposed to represent. It's not my country anymore, that's for sure. But I'll probably end up having to go back at some point, but it's just... The last time I was there was in 2019, and I can tell you, it was, to be honest, kind of embarrassing actually. A real pathetic, sad, depressing state of affairs. Just everything about that country is just wrong these days. Everything's wrong about the place. Everything. How did we get to a point where we're arresting people or questioning people for things they've said on Facebook or Twitter or whatever? Or even jailing people, sentencing people for years because they shouted at the police. And obviously I don't think that that's a respectable or right thing to do, but come on. Really? Jailing people for 2-3 years? So the enemy in the UK isn't the so-called far right, because the far right doesn't really exist. Yes, there are racists, but there are racists on all sides. I'll tell you who the enemies are of the UK. The left are the enemy. They're the real fascists. They're the real enemy within, who despise and try to shut down and censor anybody that they don't like or they disagree with, or those who have opinions that they don't like. To try and cancel you, try and put you out of a job or out of a career because you said something that they don't like or they found offensive. Like they've got some right to dictate to everybody else what's offensive or not. Because they genuinely believe that they have some superiority over everybody else because they happen to have a feeling that they're better and morally superior. You know, their empty platitudes and, you know, their point-scoring bullshit that they get up to. You know, the shallow, fake empathy and sympathy for things that happen in other parts of the world that they couldn't give a fuck about. But, you know, change your banner on a profile picture and suddenly everyone thinks you're a fucking saint. You know, share some in solidarity with this on Instagram or whatever. And, you know, people think that you're a decent person. The right, you know, the centre right or the right of politics aren't the enemy in the UK. The left are very dangerous people. You know, you've got these organisations like Antifa and Hope Not Hate that's supposed to be, you know, anti-fascist and all this shit. It was like, but actually, they are the fascists because they want to shut down voices and opinions and political ideology that they don't align with for whatever reasons, because they feel that it's wrong, it's evil, it's bad, it would take us back, it would take us towards Nazi Germany. But when actual fact, they are the ones that are taking us towards that. And if they're so desperate to avoid it, why are they so why are they acting the way that fascism did in Germany in the 30s and 40s? Because while the far right might not exist, something along those lines may come into existence if this charade of epic bullshit continues for too much longer. Because like what happened with National Socialism in Germany in the 30s, a lot of components came together, unfortunately, where the average German man and woman on the street were so utterly desperate and in despair that Hitler, that in their eyes, Hitler was a source of inspiration and hope, and that was wrong, of course. But in the context of what was happening at that, what the Germans had gone through since the First World War up until, you know, the rise of National Socialism, certainly when Hitler got into power and up until the Second World War started, you know, nobody in their right mind would support anti-Semitism. But you can see how and why that happened, because people, I mean, there was already anti-Semitism there anyway, and it had been for a long time in Europe, and in Britain as well. But coupled with that was severe embarrassment of the loss of the First World War, the damage to the German economy, and then the depression as well. people were so utterly gone and beyond fed up, beyond frustrated, that for them Hitler was the only option, was the only solution to the economic issues that were going on in Germany at the time. And of course, in hindsight, if people knew what Hitler was going to end up, well, maybe not him directly, but indirectly because of the orders that he gave to people that then gave them to other people, that set in motion the legislation, the things that eventually spiraled into the final what became the final solution, then most Germans would never have voted for him, probably. But no, I don't think most Germans realised in the 30s just how bad things would become. But then again, maybe they just didn't give a shit. But whatever the case, in hindsight, it was utterly beyond criminal, beyond utterly disgusting and immoral and wrong in every way. That Hitler should never have been allowed anywhere near such a position of authority, and none of those people around him should have been either. And so, we are heading towards, in the UK, if we're not careful, we are heading towards a radical right party. Because I think people are starting to get desperate over there. The Labour are basically going to tax people into poverty, basically. More poverty than they already are now. Like they aren't paying enough for fucking fuel and food and energy. It's just... I just don't know what to say anymore. I just don't know what to say anymore about that country. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about the place anymore. I don't even know what it is. It makes me sick. Honestly, it makes me feel sick. The amount of propaganda that's being allowed to propagate, is that the right word? To be infested into every nook and cranny of society over there for the last 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it's been. Just everything's become a cesspit. Everything. Healthcare, education, welfare, economy at large, the law, policing, local authorities getting away with basically getting away with murder, covering up gangs, rape gangs, that they knew about for a long period of time, that let's cover it up, let's hide it under the table, let's sweep it under the rug, because it's, we don't want to be seen as racist, we don't want to be seen as this, that, we're the left, we don't, we're not that, we're not, we don't support, we're not racist, we're the good people, we're the right people, we're on the right side of history, we're the morally righteous gang. When you really think about it, if the police are against you, the laws against you, the government's against you, the local authorities, the councils against you, you're on your own in that country. And we know what happens when people feel desperate. People do desperate things in desperate times. And that's where we're heading towards over there. We are either heading now towards reform gaining government in 2029, or potentially possibly even UKIP. Because if reform done can't maintain their credibility, because people are now starting to question the motives and agenda of Nigel Farage and Tice, and have been for a while actually, then eventually you may see UKIP start to gain attention again, or even like Britain First. I don't particularly have a I don't think that Paul Gold, is that his name? Paul Golding is a bad person. I don't think he's a bad man at all. I think he genuinely is a very, like Anne-Marie Waters of formerly For Britain. I think these are very, very passionate, deeply caring individuals, actually, that genuinely do love their country and have desperately tried to warn people of the dangers of the things that are coming. But it's fallen on deaf ears for the better part of 20 years. People just don't want to listen because they feel, because in England there's this psyche of we must be moderate, we must be seen as the centre left or centre right. You know, nobody votes for these fringe parties, as they're called. You know, but unfortunately, it may very well be these fringe parties that actually save the country in the end. I mean, you know, how long could we go on like this? How seriously? How much longer can we go on with thousands of people crossing the English Channel every day or every other day, and you know the population going up by what, 1 million every 2-3 years or something, whatever it is? Yeah, this is not sustainable. This is not. This isn't going to work. You know, the country was virtually unrecognisable when I was there in 2019. You know, we're almost 6 years on, and God knows what the country. I've been stepped foot in the country since then, so God knows what it's like. But by all accounts, from what I see on things like GB News and channels I follow on YouTube, it's become an absolute cesspit, absolute dump of a place. I mean, it's always been a bit of a shithole, excuse my French, but it really has. It's always been a bit of a dump of a country, but never it was better than what it is now. Much better when I was younger. There was a sense of hope and renewal and optimism in the country that's fucking gone, absolutely gone. And you know, with the arrest of Tommy Robinson very recently, you know, people are angry out there. Like that, people, I think politicians genuinely underestimate just the level of sheer anger and frustration at them, and just at the left in general, and lefty lawyers that are allowing all this shit to go on, and they've gotten away with all sorts of corruption for the last few decades. What is it going to take? Yeah, I thought the riots might prove to be some kind of catalyst to some kind of positive change, but it just doesn't seem that it's just every time there's a potential of an uprising, of a potential of revolution of sorts, it's just always quashed. It's just another excuse for the government to clamp down and crack down on everything that they wanted to do anyway, but they just needed an excuse to do it. And that was just another justification. You know, Keir Starmer really is a dead man walking. As I've said before on my channel, he really is. He's a goner come 2029. And I think deep down he knows that. He knows he's not going to last long. If he doesn't get booted out, he'll end up having to resign before 2029. But I suspect probably that the Labour Party will lose in 2029, because they've only been in office, just over 100 days, whatever it's been. And look at the fucking mess they've made. The absolute mess. And treating pensioners like scum. No, people don't forgive things like that. Treating some of the most vulnerable people in society, and some of the people that deserve some of the most respect, like in that way, treating them like that, they won't forget that. Labour, they don't realise just how fucked they are. They don't realise just how badly shot in the foot they've shot themselves. They're fucked. They are absolutely fucked come 2029. I'm telling you. Now, whether they get booted out, whether people turn to the Liberal Democrats or people turn back to the Conservatives, I don't know. I suspect Reform will probably gain quite a lot of traction, I suspect. Whether they'll be able to form a government in 2029, I don't know, that remains to be seen, but it's possible. I suspect probably not, but we're not a majority, but it could be a hung parliament. It could very well be that the Conservatives and Reform end up having to do some kind of deal, possibly. That might be what happens, and maybe Reform eventually become more popular after that. I don't know. My guess would be that it'll probably be between the Liberal Democrats and Conservatives. There'll be a hung parliament. It'll be the same thing that happened with Nick Clegg and David Cameron, I suspect. I don't know. I'm just saying that. I don't know if that's likely, but I can't see Reform. But who knows what happens? 2029 is a long, long time away from now, so who knows? But one thing is for sure, and that's that Labour. We can't allow Labour to continue. Excuse me. We just can't. We can't allow Labour to have another term in office. We just can't. We can't. Labour need to be gone. They need to be booted out as quickly as possible. It's not going to work. It's just not going to work. These people attending these sort of, these so-called freedom rallies. Yeah, well, that's all good and great, and I don't think that's. I think that it's good that people should get out there and voice themselves, peacefully, and in a respectful, civilized manner. But also at the same time, it's like, is it really making any difference? Is it really going to change anything? Probably not. It's democracy is in the UK. It's just a big illusion, really. It doesn't really make any difference, really, in the end. It's people that end up becoming the prime minister. They've been vetted for years. They've been in the eyes of people of real powerful people, and companies and organisations, corporations, banks and so forth, lobbyists. Probably for 10 years, if not more. So it doesn't surprise me that Keir Starmer got to where it did. It takes a special kind of scummery. Oh, it's not a real word, but it takes a certain kind of slimy sleazeball kind of type of individual, like Sir Keir Starmer, to get to where he gets to have that kind of position. We live in an unfair, corrupt world. That is a fact. We don't live in a fair, just society, really. even in the UK, it's always been infested with sleazy scum, just dirty, controlling, powerful, influential types of people who, let's be honest, couldn't give a fuck about the average man or woman. Never really have. You know, the rot setting, I think, honestly, probably with Thatcher, but certainly by the time we got round to Blair and Gordon Brown, you know, the country it signed its own death warrant. It was a goner. And it's just got gradually worse since the Conservatives, you know, with the financial crash that happened, you know, with austerity, you know, just everything's just gone wrong. It's really the UK, the country that is today, is a byproduct of excessive immigration, failed integration, if you can even call it that, integration efforts. You know, the destruction of business, self-employment, independent businesses, small businesses. You know, the rise of corporations, of big retail giants. You know, more and more people end up having to become reliant upon welfare because they can't earn enough money to make it worthwhile, or just having to basically top up their salaries because they just not earning enough money. But you must work 2 jobs or 3 jobs. You must get a degree or 2 or this or this or this. It's always the public's fault. There's never any accountability or responsibility from the government or those in positions of power that could make things easier and better for people. You know, the world is run by people that stand by and do nothing, and also by people that have their own interests at heart. Ultimately, you know, the world is run by psychopaths who only really care about their lining their own pockets, positioning themselves to get more money or influence or power or control or whatever it is, serving their own needs more than everybody else. That's the world we live in. And the thing is, and ultimately the issue as well is that most people don't do anything. Most people just, I'm all right, Jack, kind of attitude. I'm all right, you know, I'm okay. But they're not, really. Most people are miserable cunts. Most people are miserable, boring, fucking soulless droids, really, that are just doing what they have to do to survive. So they're just as much to blame as well. And the people, the intellectual types, the people that know what's going on, they soon get shut down. They're the mental ones. They're the problematic types. You know, they're rocking the boat. We can't have that. We can't have people question our society, the way things are, the status quo. Oh no, we can't have that. They must be silenced. They must be shut down immediately. So there's really no hope in this world as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry to be defeatist and negative, but there's just too much apathy in this world now. Too much apathy. People don't give a shit. People only care about themselves and their needs. We live in a selfish world these days. You know, collectivism's gone. Communities have gone. And governments have made sure that those things went a long time ago. Governments are there to disrupt any kind of dissent, to make sure that the population has just about, the basic minimum things, but not enough to really change things, to shine a mirror up to the people in power of just how unfair and unjust and how corrupt everything really truly is. Everything's corrupt. Everything is a scam. If you look deep enough, it's all a scam. And you're the ones that are paying for it. The average man and woman. They don't give a fuck about us. They never have and they never will. It's all about them. Because in their eyes, the world is for them. It's not for us. We're just leeches, ants. We don't matter to these people. We are the problem that needs to be dealt with. They have to come up with some kind of final solution to deal with it. How do we deal with all these cretins and leeches in society? Well, let's make it virtually impossible to stay on welfare. So then you end up with a lot of a rise in homelessness and people taking drugs and becoming alcoholics. Or let's make it or make it miserable, utterly miserable, that people come off it and take any old shite job or career and end up fucking miserable in that way and not earn enough money to be able to have any kind of real life. The world is a dark, 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 dark place. When you really face up to the reality of just what's really going on. And that's a hard thing to deal with. Especially as a woman, but as a man, I find that difficult to deal with. Because I think, for me at least, I tend to be a kind of problem solver, and I tend to be someone that wants to find solutions and to find ways of making things better and fairer. But what I don't want to live in is this utopian, liberal left, far left, mental institution of a world where anything goes, anything's accepted without any kind of dissent at all. I don't want to live in a world like that. But here we are. And the future doesn't seem to look much better as far as that from where I'm standing, unless we have, well, I think, there are glimmers of hope on the horizon with potentially the re-election of Donald Trump as the president of the US, the potential of Labour being kicked out of office before 2029, which could happen. But certainly, I suspect they will, I hope, will lose the election come 2029. I hope. Because if they don't lose, God forbid, I don't even want to think about it. Because by the time we get to 2029, things will have changed beyond all recognition. How long can we just go on like this? Seriously, I know I keep saying this, but seriously, when are we going to reach breaking point? When are we going to finally reach a stage in the UK where the native population suddenly rise up and say, fuck your globalist agenda, shove up your fucking ass, we don't want any of it. This is what we want, and if you're not willing to fucking bend to our needs, then you're gone, you're finished. in my opinion, Labour, the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats should be confined to the political history dustbin. They've had the time. They've made no end of fucking mess in that country over the last few decades. They should be gone. They should have no place in politics in this day and age, in my opinion. Because they don't serve. You know, they've both had long bouts of governance, and what have they really done in their time in office? For the last few decades, very, very little, really. You could say maybe the Labour did a little bit more under Blair, perhaps in some ways, but at the same time they also brought in political correctness that turned into the infestation of woke ideology and progressivism, if you can even fucking call it progressive. It's anything but progressive. So here we are in 2024, almost 2025. What a state of affairs, what a country, what a legacy, what a state the country's in. How depressing it must be for young people these days, Lee. Now, I remember when I left school and it was hardly ideal in 2006, 2007, but now there's just nothing there for people. There's nothing there. I mean, the country can't even get the very basic necessities right. You know, over here in Thailand, you can go and see an optician within the space of half an hour. You can get a dentist appointment. You can go to a doctor. You can get into a hospital very, very quickly. And in the UK, they can't even get basic stuff like that right. Something is deeply rotten in that country. Deeply, deeply disturbing. I don't know who is at the heart of all this stuff. I don't know who is profiting from all this stuff, but somebody somewhere is profiting in making a shit ton of money from what's going on in with all this illegal immigration and things. There are dodgy fuckers, dodgy people, whether it's NGOs, whether it's, or what they are, NCOs, what they're called, you know, these so-called charities, government bodies and so forth. Those need to investigate. It's not the criminal gangs that are fault, because those people are just as fucking poor as the people that they're getting trying to smuggle in, really, or not far off it. So you've got to look at like who's actually profiting from this, who's making the where's the money trail, and where does it lead to? That's what we need to find out. Because I guarantee it. I put my life on it that it goes right to the very top, and I guarantee that Labour are complicit in it. I guarantee it. It won't surprise me that when one day we learn about who was funding all this shit. No doubt the EU is partly responsible. WHO is probably involved in it, and the UN. Or some offshoot of it or whatever. Or people in the UK government have got links to it. It's just very, very sad. And you know, sometimes I just feel like just pulling my hair out sometimes. What's left of it. It's not the country I grew up in. It's really not. Like I said, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't an ideal place back then either. But do you know what? I had it pretty fucking good, really. In many respects. There was still a culture there. There were still things that were part of what we consider to be English, British, whatever you want to call it, or our twist on things, let's say. that made something what we consider to be unique, our own, that are either gone now or have been, the country is such a sterilised place these days. Everybody's fucking sensitive about every fucking thing. Everyone gets offended about everything these days. We're constantly, non-stop, obsessed with the whole woke thing. Every time we watch the news, it's this or this or this or this or this all the time, every fucking day. And the media wonder why they're losing viewers. Because they're fucking sick of it. They're sick to death of this shit. They've had it for 20 plus years. They've had enough. They don't believe you anymore. They don't trust you anymore. You've proven yourself to be lying scum with political biases when you're supposed to be impartial. Nobody trusts the media anymore. Nobody. Why do you think there's been such an explosion of independent media on places like YouTube? Why do you think GB News came into being? It's not difficult to see. It's not, it's pretty logical, really. And, and God forbid anything happens to Tommy or Stephen, as his real name is. God forbid anything happens to that man. If he dies in prison, there will be such a outpouring of grief and anger and frustration in that country. That will be, which I don't want to see, because I don't want anything to happen to Tommy, regardless of what you think of the man. Whether he's, of course he leaves a lot to be desired in terms of his past and certain things that he's done, but he would say that himself. But you know what? 90% of the things that he's done and of what he's said, absolutely spot on, ruthlessly spot on, brutally honest, brutally fearless. People like Tommy, Paul Golding, Anne-Marie Waters, people like that. What's happened to them? They've been shut down, cancelled, been made out to be far-right Nazis, racists, and all the other fucking buzzwords that the left throw at these types of people, even though really they're nothing like that at all. These are just people that said things, the uncomfortable truths that people didn't want to hear. They think it, but they don't want to say it. Oh, God forbid you say it. It's all right to think it, but God forbid anybody actually say it. That's the country that we're living these days, where everyone's a bunch of fucking cowards. The country's full of cowards. Full of, well, I'm all right. I'm doing all right. As long as I'm all right, that's it. It's everything's okay. Everything's grand. Meanwhile, Islam's progressively taking over things. We are in such deep trouble. It's beyond words. We are so utterly fucked. It's we're so screwed unless something changes in the next 5 to 10 years. That is the absolute fact of the matter. We either get rid of the left wing monopoly bullshit, accepted political views, stances, attitudes, or we don't. But it's going to take some radical policies and some radical people to do that. And if that means that those people get labelled as far right, as everyone likes to say these people are, so be it. Let them be called that. If that's what it takes to get the country, to turn the country round, to change it, to get it onto a path that makes more sense, that's logical, that will work in the benefit of most people in the long run, so be it. Even if it means it's not going to be easy. Yes, there'll be backlash, there'll be dissent, there'll be people that riot, there'll be protest, of course there will be. Nobody's, we know that's going to happen. The moment if Reform got into government, formed a government, there'd be no end of people complaining and criticising. How dare we allow this kind of party to have a position of government? How dare we? Liberalism's dead. Or if it's not dead, it's dying, and the sooner that it's gone, the better. Because it's been nothing but a curse on that country for the last 30 years, honestly. I think the intentions at the beginning were good, because things did need to change, but now we've swung too far to the other side. The pendulum swung far beyond anything that it was meant to be. Far, far, far left. Of course we need to have equality. And nobody wants to live in a society where we have racism and sexism and things like that, and people treating people like garbage and just people being discriminated against. Nobody wants to live in a society like that. But we do live in a society like that, and people will always be like that, regardless of whatever you do. There'll always be horrible cunts in the world, wherever you go. There'll be people that try to be decent. There'll be nasty, vile cunts, and there'll be people that do try to be nice and decent people, or those that are stoic or indifferent, whatever. That's just human nature. You're not gonna wipe out all of human nature's instincts and primitive ways of thinking and behaving. It's never gonna happen, unless you microchip everybody and somehow make people into biotech or whatever, which probably is going to happen in the near future. Because that's the next thing that's coming down the line. People that's what we're going to be in the next few decades. We won't be purely human anymore. We'll be. It's kind of already been processed in the last few decades anyway, with people having bionic arms and legs and things like that, and surgery and things like that, and replacing certain things or whatever. But it's going to ramp up massively over the next 50 years, that's for sure. And then you really will see, unless there's careful regulation and very, very careful management of this stuff, real exploitation of people and immoral, unethical things that happen. It's like that orange advert years ago, the future's bright, the future's orange. Well, not sure about that. Don't know. At this point in time, I don't know what the future holds. I certainly don't know what the future holds for the UK. At the moment, it's really not looking very good at all. And it breaks my heart, and I find it very sad, because it's still my country, and it always will be. But I don't recognise it anymore. I don't feel like I belong to it anymore. I don't feel like it's something that's I can connect to. It's gone. The country that I thought I knew, it doesn't really exist anymore. That's hard. That's hard to accept. That's really difficult to come to terms with. That it's changed and not for the better, really. So what do? We keep having these protests every few months. And we keep voting out, trying to vote our way out of it. We know democracy's dead anyway. We know it's corrupt. We know just how sleazy these ballot box operators can be, and postal voting, how corrupt that is, and how we've got this very segregated society now, much more segregated than it used to be. It's very, very depressing. And I'm sorry to be depressing and defeatist, but at the moment, this is how I feel. It's how I feel about the place. The country that I grew up in, the country that I have so many deep emotions and memories attached to. So many good times, some bad times, and lots of great times. Some wonderful memories. And things that I love about the country. Yes, the set things are the same as it used to be, but the fabric of the country's changed. It hasn't felt the same really since sort of 2007, 8. I don't think, in my opinion. It's just, yes, I've changed. That's part of it, but things have just gone from bad to worse. It's just got more and more sour, more and more hollow, shallow, empty. It's kind of like losing a part of yourself in a way. It's like there's a kind of almost a kind of bereavement attached to it, I suppose. It's a kind of longing for something that it just doesn't. Just nothing feels right about that country anymore. It just feels very false and very. Everyone just seems to be at each other's throats all the time, and it just seems a lot more passive aggressive than it used to be. A lot more unhappy, a lot more depressive, oppressive, controlling, disappointing. To think that I wanted to go back. What's the point? What would I be going back to? Everything's changed. The country dug its own grave. I was just an observer. Unfortunately.